Hello, everyone. On today's show, we have Cristina Valdez, our mom.
Yee.
Welcome, Mom.
Thank you.
Nice.
We're here on first of all, let's say Happy Mother's Day.
Dia de las Madres.
Dia de las Madres is for sure on Monday.
Oh, shoot. Sorry.
Well,
Mother's Day is tomorrow.
But
Americanized.
today's Mother's Day. And,
for us.
Yes. And so thank you for delivering us.
You're welcome.
Yes.
It was a lot of hard work.
Appreciate it. So we thought it would be kind of cool to have a book review, and we're going to talk about the book right now, but you're in a book club, and for many years you've been in this book club. And so I guess my first question is, why this book club? Why are you participating in it? And who's in it?
Okay. Well, I need to tell you that I went into this book club kicking and screaming because I love to read whatever I want to read. And when you're in a book club, somebody will suggest a book and then you read that book and you either love it or you don't. Sometimes you hate it. So that's why I didn't want to, but a very dear friend of mine insisted that I join this book club. She was leaving state. And so she said, I want you to join, I want you to meet these ladies. Oh my goodness, these wonderful, sweet women that are in the book club that I just love. I miss them because we haven't gotten together for about a year now. But that's how it came about that I got into this book club, and I've been in it in this particular one for probably over 7 years, I believe.
Okay.
Cool.
Now,
No. I was going to ask Mom that, when did you start liking, I think I know the answer, but I'm not sure if I know the answer. I know you're in the book club, but when did you start enjoying to read, like for pleasure?
I really started as a teenager. I figured out really young, a teenager, that reading would take me places and introduce me to characters and their lives. And my favorites are biographies and autobiographies. That's my very favorite. And actually, that's one of the things I love about this book, because in a sense, I got to know Somerset Maugham reading this book. I mean, who he is and how he thinks.
you're jumping the gun, but that's okay.
Sorry.
We cut this stuff. We just cut it and make it look good.
I had a quick question about the book club. Has there been a book that has stood out to you from the book club?
When I was, yes, I was thinking about this, and there's so many books, so many good books. But one of them that really has stood out to me throughout the years is a book called The Immortal Henrietta Lack. And it's about a woman who got cancer. She was in the a tobacco farmer, a Black woman who got cancer very young. She was in her 30s. And it ended up that her cells were taken from her without her permission. It was a major, to this day, it's a breakthrough in cell where they split cells. And it went, it's to this day, this was back in the 50s, I believe, or even 40, probably 50s. And her cells have been used to improve the way that they do science.
I remember this book.
Yeah. Oh,
that's
a good
one.
Right.
I haven't read it, but I recall what you mean now. So that's great that you guys read it and you talked about it.
Oh, definitely.
You engaged with each other, and you go to each other's houses, right? Because I participated in this one. You asked me to come to participate, and I think this one was at your house.
Yes.
So you go visit each other and that type of thing.
Yes, we host. We take turns hosting, and actually, Jacob also participated in one of the books. I'm trying to think, was it Bonhoeffer, Jacob?
It was Bonhoeffer by Eric Metaxas.
Metaxas.
Yes.
Yes. And
I
Ruben,
was
you
just there
did.
for the snacks. They were really good snacks.
I try to make good snacks when they come over.
Thanks,
But
Mom.
we do get together, and they still talk about you guys, both of you guys.
Oh, wow. Probably
About
more me,
how,
though.
oh, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Both of you. Both of you.
Ouch.
So,
Ouch.
well, and the book that we had talked about that when I went to visit was I think Far from the Madding Crowd, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, Thomas
Yes.
Hardy.
Thomas Harding.
So that's a good segue to this book because the author of this book did a treatment on Thomas Hardy that I also recommend. It's actually, so the author is W Somerset Maugham, and here's the book. Well, before I show you the book is titled The Moon and Sixpence, and I have a painting print I'd like to show you.
I want to see.
Oh, wow.
You're intrigued, aren't you?
I am.
I don't know what's going to be show and tell today.
This is this book, The Moon and Sixpence, is a sort of inspired by the life of Paul Gauguin, the great artist. And then here it is. Here's a
No.
I don't know if you can see it.
Wow, Ruben.
A little higher, a little higher. Oh, my.
Is that yours, Ruben?
It's a print, obviously. It's a print of the painting. Yes, I purchased it for, and for this apartment here. And it's titled The Vision After the Sermon, and it's by Charles Strickland. That's the name given to the character for Paul Gauguin. And so
you need to hang that up behind you.
Thank you, Mother. So
she'll tell you what to do. Just listen to her.
Have I ever steered you wrong?
So let's talk about the book.
Let's talk.
What did you guys think? Mom, I'll start with you. What did you think, just in general terms?
I loved it. Because, like I said, I realized as I was, actually I heard it. I did buy the book and I was starting to read it. And your brother, Chris, came over and he said, oh, Mom, you got to do it on audio. And you've told me that before, Ruben. And I loved it.
Let me throw a flag on the play. I say that sometimes. This one I read as a book. I didn't do it audible. I think it just depends on the book.
Oh, well, I really loved it because I loved the narrator who was speaking, and I love his language and the way that he did it, and very soothing and very very intricate. But I love the book. I feel like I got to know Somerset Maugham in a sense as a writer because I love the way he described. He would go into somebody's home, like he went into Amy's home. He described the curtains and the pattern and the rug, and then that's just the beginning because he describes people.
And and I want to hear Jake's take. When you say describes the curtains and the walls, I know people might think, oh no, he's one of those descriptive authors. He really isn't.
No.
He quickly describes. He quickly.
Yes.
Because you could picture it, but the way he draws characters, there's no one like him.
No one.
I would say like he's a narrator, right? The narrator of the book. And so when you're a narrator, you can't help but see what's in front of you, right? And kind of describe it. But the story is really the meat of it. But of course, it's Edwardian period, right? 1900, 1910 period.
Yes.
So it's this getting away from the Victorian age, and it's a time of, I don't want to say loose living, but a lot more loose than the Victorian period.
Thank you. I really like that you're saying this. That you're talking about the Edwardian period. So I
know a little bit about history.
Exactly.
A little bit.
The Victorians so Mom mentioned Thomas Hardy. That was the Victorian age, and Mom is a giant in this next age. So is there a particular character? And actually, let me just say, the mom narrator, you kind of have this concept he does in his books where he's this nameless narrator who just travels along from England to France. He observes, and you almost get a sense that he's trying to write a novel from these interesting characters revolving around Paul Gauguin or Charles Strickland. And so it's a loose, biography, basically. What was your favorite character, Mom?
That's really hard. That's a really hard question because, because it's written about Charles Strickland, and I just didn't like the person of Charles Strickland because of how he treated his family, how he treated women, how I feel like he was just using people. So he wasn't my favorite, but the book is about him, and it was very, very interesting to learn about him. But how do you say his name? Derek?
Dirk Strove.
Dirk. I really loved him. I loved his heart. He really loved this man. He saw something that nobody else saw, and therefore he wanted to love. But I think generally he had such a good, loving heart, so giving.
I have to say, because you mentioned Dirk Strove, he was my favorite character. So I'm going to mention somebody else, but I got to say,
there's others.
He's one of the greatest characters ever written in a novel. And let me just quote let me quote how Mom introduces this character. One of the first lines when Dirk comes on the scene: nature had made him a buffoon.
Yeah.
And talk about, this was early on in the book, and then later on this really comes to play. He was constantly wounded, and yet his good nature was such that he could not bear malice. The viper might sting him, but he never learned by experience, and had no sooner recovered from his pain that he tenderly placed once more in his bosom. So you get a sense of who he is. But on the other hand, and he was a painter, and he was a bad one. But though so bad a painter, he had a very delicate feeling for art. And to go with him to picture galleries was a rare treat. He was better educated than most painters, and his taste for music and literature gave depth and variety to his comprehension of painting.
That you said about his character and his ability to see art, music, was when you fall in love with this man. You fall in love with his character, even though they describe him as a buffoon. He had much to give. He had a bosom full of riches, if you want to say. He just wonderful. I mean, so sad too what went on to happen with him.
Right. So any comment, Jake, on your favorite character? Because we might go back to Dirk because he had such a central role in Strickland in particular's life.
So right, Dirk is maybe Strickland's biggest fan, right? And more than anybody, right? And he's the one who sticks up for him. So of course Dirk's my favorite as well. But as I'm reflecting back on the novel, I really like the strength of his wife. Is it Amy, his wife? The name of it?
Amy Strickland. Yeah.
I really felt like she didn't go chasing after him. She could have. She thought about it, and she decided to live her life and basically say, okay, that he doesn't want me. She actually said something like, "I wish it was a woman because he'll get tired of her and he'll come back to me."
So,
but it wasn't.
So
yeah.
She knew his character because she said that.
Here is what you alluded to, is that this quiet, I believe, stockbroker, living in England, just it's a little different than the Paul Gauguin character. I can say a loose biography based on it. but living with his wife, Amy, suddenly leaves, just walks out. And the assumption is he's left for a woman, but actually what she finds out is he left for art. He left to paint.
Paint, yeah.
And there was no woman, which she couldn't comprehend. Nobody in the family could.
No, and go ahead, Mom.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead, Jacob.
No, I was just gonna say that that's why I liked her, because she figured it out. Like, wait a minute, it's not gonna happen. I gotta figure out, and I gotta live my life, and I gotta take care of these kids. He's not coming back, and she really is out of the story after that. But there's something about her. I thought, wow, she was like the one who she knew him better than anybody. But go ahead, Mom.
Well, what I want to say about her is that at some point, do you remember that she told the narrator, let me give you some money. So if he ever needs anything, give him, stipend some, or how do you say it? Some money to him if he's ever in need. I was like, what? What? So she also had this heart of gold towards this man who walks up and leaves her and her children destitute, really, because she had to figure out how she was going to support these children and herself, which she does very nicely.
Somerset Maugham has written the bad boy, the classic bad boy, where all the women love this guy, Strickland. His wife can't let him go. Later, Dirk's wife,
Blanche,
can't let him go. And that was sad. But you're drawn to this guy, to this character. By the way, with Amy, don't you love that she could barely forgive him? She was so angry, as a wife would, and couldn't get over that he just left to paint these pictures, and she thought it was such a childish endeavor. Later, when Mom goes back, the Somerset Maugham character goes back, and he notices what's adorned the walls. The paintings of her husband, who had passed on by that point.
Yeah.
But little did anybody know that he was a genius.
Dirk knew.
Dirk could tell. Everybody was saying, who is this? These paintings, what do they mean? But Dirk could see it.
Yes. And I want to say something about Blanche also, since we're talking about characters. One of the things that I really, because as a woman, and I'm so impressed with Somerset Maugham that he would do this with Blanche. She fought Dirk hard not to bring Charles into the home, and she really was adamant, no, because she knew she had an attraction to him. She knew that. She felt it when she had met him and knew about him, and she fought him and then relented at the end. And
she liked bad boys. That's what
she liked. Bad boys.
She had a history of that, right? She had another relationship like that. So I think she knew her weakness.
Yeah. And I love that she fought it, but she at the end gave in, and reluctantly.
A woman gonna do what a woman gonna do.
I guess if you were to ask, I would pick Dirk Strove. Of course, Strickland's character is powerful as well. I'm glad you mentioned Amy Strickland, Jake, because I wouldn't have thought of that. And she has definitely some layers there to who she is. But let's talk about the narrator.
Oh my goodness.
He has a passage early on. He has this way of just, first of all, the way he gets, I'll talk about how he interacts with Strickland right now, but he has these little passages where he just talks. He gives his opinion about life. He talks about writers. He should know, Somerset Maugham should know about writers, but he talks about the discipline of writing. And listen to this, I want your reaction. He says, it is a salutary discipline to consider the vast number of books that are written, the fair hopes with which their authors see them published, and the fate which awaits them. What chance is there that any book will make its way among the multitude? And the successful books are but the successes of a season. Heaven knows what pains the author has been at, what bitter experiences he has endured and what heartache suffered, to give some chance reader a few hours relaxation to while away the tedium of a journey.
That's amazing.
It's amazing, but here's the moral he draws. He goes, the moral I draw from this is that the writer should seek his reward in the pleasure of his work and in release from the burden of his thought, and indifferent to aught else, care nothing for praise or censure, failure or success.
Amazing. Amazing.
So you really think about that pain of the author. I also want to, of course, point out that his interaction with Strickland was very brilliant, and it's a psychological relationship if you think about it, because when he wants something from Strickland, which is information, which is character sketch that he could probably write about, the way he treats him is through not asking. So when he goes searching for Strickland and he sees that he's playing chess and that he's skinny, he's lost weight, to get information, he just sits and waits and says, basically, I don't care if you give me anything. I don't want to know. And then Strickland will give him information, because that's how you draw from Strickland, is you're not direct with him, you wait. And you can really get a lot out of that, out of that relationship.
Also, Ruben, when he did have a chance to talk to him, I think especially even before that time, when he approached him, I like that he called him on the carpet, that he left his family, that he left his wife, and he left his children. You leave your children, I like that. I like that he was able to do that. And of course, the way that you're describing him getting information from him was amazing. I mean, I think I want to learn from that.
So because you brought it up, I like that too. He goes, and when Dirk introduces them, after that confrontation, Strickland pretends he doesn't know him. So they're in the cafe, and Strickland looks up as the mom character comes in, and Strickland says, "I've never seen him in my life." Mom's response, the narrator's response is, "I saw your wife the other day." Strickland,
amazing.
Strickland gave a short laugh. His eyes twinkled. And he said, "We had a jolly evening together. How long has it been?" 5 years. And he called for another absinthe. So I love that interplay. And
yeah, he had Strickland's number to the T.
In a way, though, Strickland also had his number, because later on in the story, they meet again, and the narrator, mom, does not want anything to do with him because he's destroyed Dirk and his wife and so forth.
Oh, yes.
And he does, and then, but Strickland knows that eventually he'll get to him. He'll want to know about him, and he'll laugh because he's such a crazy character, Strickland, and you could tell the narrator's trying not to laugh at some of the things he's saying, and he's like, I just can't, he just draws him in.
And when you say crazy, maybe this will give a picture of the artist. Here's a quote. "He was indifferent to money, and he was indifferent to comfort." Before I even read a little bit. Remember when he visited Mom's apartment?
Yes.
He did not take the armchair. He sat in the most uncomfortable chair, and I think he was lighting a pipe, and it upset Mom. Yeah. It upset the narrator. He's like, "Will you please sit on a comfortable chair?" And Strickland's response was, "Why do you care? I don't. I just..." So you say he had his number. He just couldn't believe that somebody would not sit on the sofa. And he says he was indifferent to money. He cared nothing about fame. You cannot praise him because he resisted temptation to make any of those compromises with the world, which most of us would yield to. He had no such temptation. It never entered his mind that compromise was possible. He lived in Paris more lonely than an anchorite in the desert of Thebes. He asked nothing of his fellows except that they should leave him alone. He was single-hearted in his aim, and to pursue it, he was willing to sacrifice not only himself, but others. Strickland was an odious man, but I still think he was a great one.
Yeah, because if you see, I mean, the aftermath of his art, how do you comprehend that kind of art, that kind of that gift that he had would never have been seen? Or, I mean, there's so many other artists, but I'm sure that they all have I know that they all have their stories, but this story is just unbelievable. I mean, to give so much to us as an artist, but so much sacrifice was made. But was it really a sacrifice to him? It doesn't appear to be, but there was sacrificial lambs, his family and the people that came into his life, Blanche, and, even at the end, Ata, I think her name was Ata, the Tahitian.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about Dirk again, because the idea about art as being one of the central focuses. What does this book say about art?
I guess my first thought about it when I was reading the book, I was thinking it's funny because the book is more about the character and these people who are involved in the art world. But I just felt like it was like, I don't want to call it a woman, but it was to Strickland, it was his mistress, and it was a passion. And I think that could be for people. In this case, it was art. It could be maybe other things, literature. It could be music, maybe even teaching. But for him, it was art, and he did anything for it. He would starve for it. He would die for it, and he did. He left his family for it. And I think part of me was thinking, wow, I want to be passionate like that, but not to the point where I'm destroying people's lives, but I want to be passionate like that.
So here's a quote about art, and he says, "They call beautiful a dress, a dog, a sermon, and when they are face to face with beauty, cannot recognize it."
Wow.
Something to think about. And also, Jake, you said that Strickland was in love with art, but what about Dirk? Or that's the word you use is mistress.
Yeah,
it was his mistress.
But
wasn't it Dirk's mistress as well? Now, Mother, you seem very distracted. Talk to us. Look at us, Mother.
I'm looking at
look at our eyes.
Talk to us. Look at our eyes.
I'm looking at a note that I wrote about.
You're taking us back to when we were in Covina, and you would leave.
Just ignore us.
Work, or you said work, but who knows?
Hey, no, it's your mother.
No,
it's your mother. Not today. Not Mother's Day.
I'm looking for a little note that I wrote about art, that it's so, to me, complicated, because you see things, people, and even today you see a piece of art, and some people see different things. It could be complicated, but to have that eye to see the way that Dirk saw, what he saw in Strickland's art, and obviously it was real because he became such a famous artist, and so to have that, you have to have that eye, and not everybody does. I might see something and go like, what's that? And it's a famous painting, so that is an art. To have that eye is also an art.
That's right. So you mentioned Dirk and art again. I like that you brought him in. So I'm going to give you a quote, and I'm going to give you a circumstance that Dirk fell into. Here's the quote. The narrator describes him. "Remember, Dirk painted as well. He was a painter, but not a good one." So Dirk is showing the narrator his paintings, Dirk's paintings. And then he showed me more. "I discovered that in Paris, he had been painting just the same stale, obviously picturesque things that he had painted for years in Rome. It was all false, insincere, shoddy, and yet no one was more honest, sincere, and frank than Dirk Stroeve.
That amazing?
Who could resolve the contradiction?
Wow.
Second thing, back to Jake mentions that Strickland's mistress was art, but I would argue so was Dirk's, because when he went back to the apartment, plot spoiler, Charles Strickland steals Dirk's wife. The man who gave him money, who put him up, saved his life.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he would have died.
Nobody else gave it. You could argue the narrator cared about Strickland, but not as much as Dirk. Put him up in his home, and he did that. So something tragic happens, and Dirk is left to himself and goes back to the apartment and finds a painting of his wife, a nude.
He didn't draw that one.
And
it wasn't his work.
It wasn't his painting. And he goes to find the scrape. I think he got a tool to destroy it. And as he's about to, he stopped. And the narrator, why did you stop? I couldn't. It was great. It was a work of art.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah. I think he even mentions later that Strickland gave him the piece. He said, it's yours, and I think Strickland understood it was art too, because he said, I after I was done with her, I just wanted her for the painting, and I moved on, because he used people, and used them up.
People,
and
that's very hard to see and to comprehend, to use people like that. It's just very, very sad. And that makes me think about Rose Waterford. Do you remember her? She is the one that introduced the narrator to Amy, Rose Waterford. Okay. And she was a piece of work, that girl, that woman, because she would say kind of hurtful things about other people. She said something.
Like a gossiper.
Really, yeah. She was a gossiper and just looking for an in to popular people and people that were of well-to-do and rich and all that kind of stuff. But she was also a character that I love the way, again, going back to the way that the narrator described people, because he would describe people, had 3 chins and was as round as a barrel, and all these different things, their hair, what they were wearing, and all that stuff. And he did that also with Rose. But one of the quotes that I wrote down that she said about Amy, who she was supposed to be a friend of, the narrator was describing Amy as so sympathetic and kind and sympathetic, and Rose said this about her.
And just to give a little context too, is that the Amy character, Amy Strickland, sort of like to host these artists and these writers into her home. She didn't write herself, but she just liked to kind of have that circle
around herself,
because the narrator is kind of a famous writer. He didn't describe himself that way, but you get a sense that these are important writers.
Yes, thank you for saying that, because that kind of takes us to that place. So the narrator is saying this to Rose Waterford, like, what a sympathetic woman, how wonderful she is. And Rose Waterford says, milk is very nice, especially with a drop of brandy in it. The domestic cow is only too glad to be rid of it, of a swollen udder, because a swollen udder is very uncomfortable.
Jeez.
I was like, whoa, naughty Rose. So that's the kind of person that she was, but she's another character. She comes up pretty much towards the beginning, I guess, of the book. and then she fades out. But anyway, she's just another character that came to my attention because she was so naughty. I like
You
naughty
always
people
like, yes, you do.
sometimes. Yes.
But there's a way in which the English are the way you describe is naughty, or the way they do it is very careful in their insults. They're eloquent as they tear you apart, which
Yeah.
I kind of like.
And that's what she did. You know, she called her a cow, and that her sympathy was like milk that was too much for her.
But
For
she
her
had to.
udder. She
Yeah,
had to. Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Great.
That's
So
that was. Yeah.
any other comments about character art? Now remember, we haven't really. You touched on Ada, or I think that's how you pronounce it, Strickland's new wife, as he traveled to Tahiti. Any last thoughts on his journey to Tahiti that you'd like to discuss? Either one of you.
Well, obviously, it's kind of. I wonder even if Strickland knew his time was coming, to an end. I know there he does some of his best work, and I think on his deathbed he tells his wife to destroy his art, and I'm trying to comprehend that, but maybe I think artists aren't always excited, aren't always happy with their pieces. They always feel like it could be a little bit better, right? And maybe that was the reason why he did that. But I think maybe he knew his time was coming to an end, and he had a little bit of work left to do, and there was a place where he really wasn't going to be distracted too much, and he could love whoever he wanted to love. I think the real woman was like 13 years old, right?
Yes.
And so that's somebody who's intoxicated with whatever he could do, right? So anyway, that's just my only thought about his travel.
I wonder if that was his way of repenting, to have his some of his work destroyed. I wonder,
It's interesting.
And do you remember what his final work was?
The walls, you mean?
What he painted on the walls? What he painted on the walls of his hut? It wasn't a hut. Maybe it was.
Right,
yeah.
It could have been, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember. What was it?
I don't remember either. Was it?
It was Adam, and it was a picture of the Garden of Eden.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Interesting.
Yes.
So,
Wow.
it was a phenomenal. There's no way to describe it.
Yeah.
Not the mom character, because there was a moment where in Paris where you kind of think to yourself, oh no, the narrator says, and I never saw him again. But he goes to, I think the narrator goes to Tahiti just to gather information and talk to the doctor,
right,
who came upon the Strickland character and saw his piece because he's dying.
Right.
He's dying. And the description. And don't you just love how one of his visits, the doctor visits, he forces a painting as payment.
Yes.
For treatment. He's like, okay, and later on, everybody's scrabbling on the island looking for any painting in Paris and Tahiti, because this,
great artist died.
Gauguin was Van Gogh's friend.
Yeah.
And everybody's looking for this artwork, but I just love the way they touch on the idea of when you first encounter genius, you're not sure. You don't. There is no strike there is no recognition in most people, and Mom and basically Strove were saying you have to work for it. To understand it, you must first work for it.
For sure.
So
that's a very interesting quote, because it could apply to anything. You have to work for it to, in any of our lives, even, in any place that we go, you guys as teachers,
But by the way, I'm sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say that, we have to work to be where we need to be, or where we should be, or where we strive to be.
Even Strickland worked,
Yeah, he did. In his
hard.
way. Yeah, very hard.
And I love when the narrator confronts him as to why he did this, he wasn't articulate as
Strickland
the narrator was. Strickland couldn't. All he said was he looked up and he said, "I have to paint," which I love the narrator's frustration with that. He says, "That's it? That's all you have? I have to paint." I want to be precise though on the idea of work for it. This is the actual quote. He's talking to Blanche. Back to Mom, what you were saying about the moment where Blanche says no, and she commented on Strickland's painting, on Strickland coming to the house because he's sick and bringing him in. She mentioned his paintings as well. She says they're awful.
Yeah, she did.
And this is Dirk's response. Sweetheart, you don't understand. Why should you think that beauty, which is the most precious thing in the world, lies like a stone on the beach for a careless passerby to pick up idly? Beauty is something wonderful and strange that the artist fashions out of the chaos of the world in the torment of his soul. And when he has made it, it is not given all to know it. To recognize it, you must repeat the adventure of the artist. It is a melody that he sings to you, and to hear it again in your own heart, you want knowledge and sensitiveness and imagination.
Wow.
That's art right there. That's art.
That's art in a nutshell, is for sure. That shows his art, the value of his artistic, of who he is artistically. And it's so surprising because he has all this knowledge and talent of recognizing, yet he was a bad painter. You know, it's like, what? That says a lot, actually, because you have to have that in you, that it's such a gift that it's ingrained in you. And if you don't have it, you don't have it, no matter how much you see it in somebody else. It's not you. That's amazing.
So, Jacob, how would you teach this book?
Well, I don't teach literature English. However, I do teach history, and I would talk about the Victorian age coming to an end when this book is being written, and then actually even during this artist's life, right? The story is happening towards the end of Victorian era, starting the Edwardian era. I would talk about the dress, even the way people communicate. There was something in the book that talked about how important it is to talk, and how people who really cared about communication would take the time to find the words. And I thought, wow, we don't do that today, we don't do that. And I would talk about that, and I would talk about the differences between one era. And then in America, we have the 1920s coming right after Edwardian, right? And how it was even more free, it's kind of a connection with the Edwardian period where it was free, I don't want to say everything was free, but morality was more loose. Women were now drinking in bars. And you saw that happening in the Edwardian period where people were sleeping around, and it was kind of brought out a little bit more, where before it was more hush hush. And so I think I would talk about that piece and how even within this book, you see the change of an era, and and how morals change, and how we see that in the book regarding these relationships, and how a little more selfishness during this Edwardian period than it would maybe in the Victorian period, where you would just stay home, you would stay with your family. You wouldn't be changing careers mid-age, but now it's like, hey, that's a possibility. And maybe I will look out for myself. A very selfish thing, but I think we see that in the Edwardian period. So I think that's how I would teach it, looking at those eras.
How would you teach it, Ruben?
I would,
because you teach
literature.
This is right up your alley, son.
Yes. I would well, I'll say it, how I would teach it. I've actually already used the painting.
Nice.
I've already brought it out because you see the nuns, sort of like, I think these religious figures, and then the wrestling, right? The biblical reference. I don't know if you could tell about the biblical reference up here.
Okay, yes.
And then there's a little cow in the background. I believe. Looks like a cow. And so I mentioned to students that you could see the biblical allusions. You could see the nuns very clearly, but pay attention to the details. Look at the details because they also inform the bigger picture. And the artist isn't just going to give you the obvious. They want you to look and to seek. And so we were doing a look at a graphic novel called Mouse about the Holocaust. And there were a lot of little surprises in the details that the students were missing. And so I brought up the painting. The second thing I would do is get ready because Somerset Maugham's a very interesting writer. I want to read you a quote that is cool. And it's, let me just read it to you. Remember he was living in London and then he went to Paris. It was that's when he met up with Strickland. It was about 5 years after this that I decided to live in Paris. I was growing stale in London. I was tired of doing much the same thing every day. My friends pursued their course with uneventfulness that had nobody had any surprises for me. And when I met them, I pretty knew well what they would say. Even their love affairs had a tedious banality. Life was ordered too pleasantly. I was seized with panic. I gave up my small apartment, sold my few belongings, and resolved to start afresh. By the way, he did a little Strickland, if you think about it. He pulled a Strickland in a way where he just left everything, but not nearly as dramatic. But what I like about that is that this is Somerset Maugham's life. He would do that. He would leave England and go into Paris to write, to look at subjects. He would go into China. If you read The Painted Veil, it's a scene about China. It's a very good scene about China. It's multiple scenes about a husband and wife. And then he'll go into back to Paris and things. But the point is, I would talk about Maugham's biography because little did people know back then, Somerset Maugham was a spy. He was sent by England to spy during World War I and World War II to steal. He was basically spying on the Nazis. And if you think about it, how genius was it that nobody would ever suspect this famous novelist? Who's thinking he's doing what he's describing here? He's just going into Paris to.
Wow, that's amazing.
To write. And in World War II, he nearly lost his life as the Nazis were coming into Italy. And he barely escaped with his life. And he gave some great speeches about duty to country that were great in the sense, not just the speeches, but the fact that he had a stuttering problem. He had a speech impediment and he didn't care. He just gave his speech, stuttering and all, about duty to country and what that moment in history was if they didn't stand up. It's pretty powerful. So the biography of an author, when you're reading a piece, for some reason, students really read it closer, the pieces, because they feel like they know the author. So I would introduce the biography of Maugham when I teach this. So.
Excellent.
I think that is key, Ruben, because that's what I loved about this book in particular, was that I feel like I got to know him in him writing this book. I always, it seemed very clear that the narrator was Maugham.
Now he would say, he and other critics would say, well, no, they're two different things. It's fiction. That's not him. That's not the Maugham. And Maugham would say that. That's not me. That's. But then if you took him privately, he'd say, it's impossible to strip yourself of you when you write. It's a layer of you. Sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. For sure.
Well, this has been a very great moment where we get to talk to our mother on Mother's Day, Jacob. What were your thoughts? Did you have a good time talking to Mom?
I did. Can I just take like 30 seconds and ask Mom like a little brain teaser?
Yeah.
And because I share this with my, I'm
Quiz
going
her
to share
and
something.
Jacob, quiz her, and if she fails, you got to give her an F. Mom or no?
It's kind of off the topic a little bit, but I do share this with my students almost every year. And this is how I share the story. Tell me how you would answer it. Mom, just remember Ruben and I as little boys, right? Let's say I'm 7 and Ruben's 5, and we're in a room in the back. This actually happened in real life to me, okay? And there's an earthquake, and you run, and you know you have to get your boys out. We're not gonna talk about Chris right now. We're pretending he's not around. And you have to pick one of the boys. Who do you choose? And there's an answer. There's a right answer. Who do you choose? You have to choose one. You have to pick one. Who do you
No,
choose?
I can't choose one.
Your mother. There is an answer.
Jake? Is that?
You know the answer, Ruben? You're not a parent.
I don't know the answer. What's the answer, Jake?
You do pick one. You always pick me, but no, you don't pick me. The who you pick is the one closest to you, the one you physically closest, not emotionally.
Well, that makes sense.
You pick, yeah,
that makes sense to
you
do
have to
that.
pick somebody. You don't think, oh, I can't pick either of them. No, I ran. There was an earthquake in my home one day years ago when the boys were small, and I remember running, thinking to myself, the ceiling's gonna fall on me, but I need to try to go to that room and grab whoever's I see first. Okay.
Yeah.
And not knowing I'm probably not going to pick it. And I don't care who was first. I'm going to pick the first boy I get, and then I'm out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's an
you,
ugly situation, but it's a real situation that people have had to make those choices.
Because when you say that, I'm thinking they're both there, and who are you going to pick? No.
Yeah.
But you pick the child that's closest to you, no matter.
And I share with my students so they can make those choices and think about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mom, Cristina Valdez, thank you for joining us on our discussion. It was a trip. We had a trip to Paris.
We had a little trip.
London, to
We
Tahiti.
We did.
Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. I love you.
I'm thrilled. I was thrilled to be asked, and thank you so much. I love you guys, and I'm following you guys on the podcast, and it's just
excellent,
amazing. I love it. I saw you guys last night.
Oh, wow.
Well, you mean on our last video? You didn't see us, but you saw us on
the video
YouTube
when you're
channel.
discussing the week. When you
nice.
discussing the week.
Thank you very much, and
thank you
for watching the video. Don't forget to like the video and make a comment. Tell us
Mother's Day, Mom.
Tell us Happy Mother's Day to my mom, and also if you've read the book, what you think. And we'll see you next time, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.